let's move on and talk about Derek Adams then. A man who never seems to be that far from the headlines. He is obviously currently the Bradford manager, and he took the Bantams to South Wales at the weekend. By the way, if you want to go back and listen to our podcast on Mike Flynn, who's recently left Newport, then that is our previous episode and it's available on our feed as well. But Derek Adams loves being the pantomime villain, and he certainly got some stick from the Newport fans at the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, on a quiet weekend because of the international break, he made most of the headlines in the EFL for me in terms of the post-match interview was quite amusing. You know, he took loads of stick. I was aware in advance of the game that Newport fans were looking forward to him visiting Rodney Parade after the play. I mean, there's a lot went on last season with the Kevin Ellison saga, you know, and the way that Ellison left Morecambe, and then the celebration when they played Morecambe played Newport, and then of course Adams has the last laugh in the playoff final over Newport, over Ellison. And, you know, no doubt enjoyed the fact in some of the things he said post-match. So I was aware pre-game that this was going to be coming, and Adams was clearly aware and I think kind of basked in it. You know, he enjoys to be the centre of attention in this way, I think. Very much a showman in that regard, someone who believes that, that managers have a part to play in the entertainment of football, in the entertainment industry, and building games up. And, you know, so I think he would have been quietly looking forward to it. And then afterwards he's saying, you know, I didn't hear a thing. You know, I was told about this reception that was going to be waiting for me, that there's going to be this hostile atmosphere, and I didn't hear a thing. And by all accounts, I think it was pretty hostile. It was, you know, it was quite noisy and raucous. And then, you know, his post-match interview also made reference to the referee, and he picked up a booking, I think, in the game for his touchline, but even managed to make light of that as if it was something or nothing. And, you know, it's just... I think he enjoyed the day, even though he'd have loved to have got the 3 points. He had to settle for a 0-0 draw.
It's an interesting angle, isn't it? Because most, you know, as a football manager, one of the traits, you have to be hard-nosed. You have to have a thick skin. And a lot of managers, you would say, don't mind being fairly unlikable. But Derek Adams actually thrives on being unlikable. And not just for the fans. A lot of other managers seem to find him a bit of a curious character, but I think underneath, you know, he does get on with other EFL managers, doesn't he? I'm sure it was Wayne Hatswell would have been in charge of Newport, but I'm sure he'll have a few drinks with him after the game, perhaps. But yeah, it's one of those managers that really rubs people the wrong way. But underneath it all, there must be a softer side to him. Yeah,
well, interestingly enough, there seems to be a bit of a theme in terms of the types of managers that have name-checked Adams and get along with him and think he's good value. I think it's certain personality types. I don't think it's for everybody. And I think a big part of that is, you know, the emotional side of the game. The emotional side is a blind spot for him. It's not necessarily on his radar to worry about upsetting people, to worry about the rights and wrongs of way to behave, the etiquette between managers, the normal etiquette that managers might believe you have to behave a certain way to maintain a sense of harmony, and the kind of bonded by the LMA and all of these things. And I don't think Adams necessarily buys that. I think he's just, he just tries to do his job to the best of his ability. And if that means calling out the opposition manager pre-game or trying to get under opposition skin, if it's going to change their performance, then there's some value in that. And I don't really care about the etiquette of what other people think. Couldn't care less I couldn't give a monkey's what other people think about me and what they think about my methods. It's like, I'm going to do what's best for me and my team. And it's actually part of my value system to believe that why shouldn't we be calling each other out? Why shouldn't we be saying these home truths to each other or trying to get a rise out of each other? We're in the entertainment industry after all, so that's what we should be doing. So I think he's misunderstood in that sense in some ways, but I think there's certain types of managers who do get where he's coming from and realise it's, for the most part, it's harmless. It's just professionalism. It's just his job. It's his way of doing his job. And I think once managers get past that and respect that, actually come to quite like him. But then there's other managers who will just never get along with him because they'll just rise to him every single time. And Steve Evans is the standout there. I think it's always good value when them two come head to head.
Well, we talked about Steve Evans last week, didn't we? Going head to head with Joey Barton. It seems that if you want a rise from a manager, head to the Priestfield. You'll definitely get one there. I often wonder what the players make of it, because, earlier in the season, he called out his players after an EFL trophy collapse. I think it was against Manchester United's under 23s. And he said, these players have been begging for the opportunity to play, but many of them won't again now. They've not taken their opportunities. I've got a big squad, but I'm not going to, after that performance, I'm not going to utilize it. And, heavily criticizes players. Now, we've seen managers do that before, and it usually goes one of two ways. He's calling out the fringe players here rather than his main squad. But you playing the pantomime villain, some players, like you say, with some managers, some players with certain personality types will go for that, others might not. But he does always seem to get the best out of his players. You look at his track record, you look at, he's done okay so far at Valley Parade. The players must thrive upon it.
Yeah, I think that this is the interesting dynamic where Bradford are concerned this season, because I don't think the whole story's played out yet. I think we're seeing the potential of Derek Adams leading an automatic promotion charge, but I also think beneath the surface, there's some underlying questions that need to be answered, and it's to do with connection. It's to do with Adams connecting with his players and not losing that dressing room, and connecting with the fans and not losing the fans. Now, obviously, it's only in adversity that these get tested, so results can, you can avoid these potential scenarios blowing up if results are good. And generally speaking, we see Adams at this level and his ability to unhinge any opposition at this level. And, results do tend to be good. So these things might not surface. But we saw also the defeat at Crawley, 2-1 defeat only recently, a fortnight ago or so. And he called out the first team players in that scenario in such a way that was a bit more damning than just on the day you weren't good enough, on the day I won't tolerate this. He was talking about the culture he inherited. He's like, I can understand why this club has been struggling for so many years. If that's what's been going on, if that's, and he can tread a fine line. Sometimes you've got to be careful because he's brutal in the things that, when he comes out with an assessment, he can be brutal with it. And he talked about almost, it almost strayed into the realms of the millennial generation and snowflakes and not taking criticism very well and all of this type of talk. And then you wonder, right, okay, are you pushing the wrong buttons of your own players now? Because if it is a generational thing and you're going to go down that road, you need to be careful that you got to be able to pick up the pieces afterwards. And this is the thing, is sometimes Adams can be so brutal and be so to the point and says exactly what's on his mind. But if he damages players or, upsets players to a point where they're not really sure about him anymore, we've seen time and time again in this day and age, a manager, you got to be able to pick up the pieces as well. You can't just, break the dressing room and then not pick up the pieces afterwards. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic as it plays out. It's all going to depend how much adversity Bradford encounter. If they don't encounter too much and they keep winning games and that feel-good factor of just winning games alone keeps them going, then they'll be fine. But otherwise, there's just this underlying thing that you just wonder, what like we saw how it broke down at Plymouth. It was with the media then and the fan base at the same time, because he was saying things that weren't going down well. He wasn't apologising. The media were getting banned. And, I think if Bradford were to go on a run of games, we saw a slight glimpse of it at the beginning of the season where they won the first 2 home games and then didn't win the next 2 or 3. And then the murmurs started, and some of the things Adams said about the crowd, you just think how far, if this went 5, 6, 7 games where they weren't winning, you begin to wonder what Adams might say that might put noses out of joint.
I can imagine him using the word namby-pamby as well to describe some of his players. But yeah, he did say this weekend after the goalless draw at Newport that he was proud of the character that his players showed and the fight, and maybe that was him, do you think, maybe trying to steer it back round?
Yeah, I think so. That's probably his best attempts at picking up the pieces. And I think that's the point, is results are good. A 2-0 win over Rochdale, absolutely dominant display. And then a 0-0 draw in a really hostile atmosphere away at Newport. They're 2 good results to back up that Crawley incident with. It's easy to pick up the pieces when the results are good and then you can come out and praise the players afterwards. But what if the response to, and he's played his cards well, you have to say then, if that's the response to the Crawley defeat, then okay, on this instance, he was right to say what he said. He was right to be as blunt and as, radically honest as he was. But what if those next 2 games have been defeats? Then how do you pick up the pieces if the results aren't doing it for you? It's all right coming back round and praising the players when the results are good after you've called them out. But how would he have picked up the pieces? That would have been my concern. If the Crawley defeat would have been followed by 2 more defeats, then you might have a real problem on your hands. And this is going to be an interesting, because I don't think this is the end of this story for Bradford. I think what Adams alluded to in terms of the culture over the past few years and the changes of managers and the ownerships, not necessarily leading by example at times, I think there are underlying culture concerns, and Adams isn't necessarily a manager that fixes culture. So I think that this might crop up as a recurring theme throughout the season. I think Bradford will finish top 7 for sure. They've got to, with, you know, Adams in charge and the quality of personnel they've got. But in terms of automatic promotion, I think it might be a bit nip and tuck, because we might have a bit of back and forth as the season goes, of performances like this, how Adams reacts to them, how they get back on the horse and go forward again. You know, I don't think it's necessarily straightforward, but it's going to be fascinating to see this story develop.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how every defeat for Bradford, and they haven't been good on the road so far this season, but how every defeat is then followed up, isn't it? And, you know, Derek Adams is a promotion winner, 2-time promotion winner in League Two. And his sides, for me, I always associate them with going on runs as well, you know, towards the back end of the season when there is that glimmer of promotion. They can really put a sequence of results together. So that should also give the Bradford fans hope. And I guess now seeing the 2 results that you mentioned and 2 clean sheets and that performance against Newcastle, which against Newport, which was, you know, backs against the wall at times, but they fought it out, and they all those long balls and those throw-ins and everything that was absolutely hurled at them, they defended well. That certainly gives you hope now that maybe one of those runs is just around the corner.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it has been the right response, and the 2 clean sheets are probably the most pertinent point of the whole thing, is the fact that, you know, he's called them out on certain characteristics of the behaviour out of possession, things like that, and they've responded with 2 clean sheets. So that has worked this time, and it could be the building block for a good run. I think the main thing with Adams to understand, really, you know, is how much he tailors his game to suit the opposition, and it's a measure of how much he understands this level and or how, you know, how strong he is at this level as a manager, that he has had those 2 promotions and a playoff final as well with Plymouth. And, you know, his level of consistency at League Two level is extraordinary. And I think it's the meticulous detail he goes into understanding the opposition. And he's never shy to let us know in post-match interviews exactly how he unhinged a particular opposition, which is really insightful, you know, from the outside looking in, to be able to understand other teams. So I think that's the thing. I think he just gets on a run. So when you talk about, a real good run, I think it's where the players are just buying in that, you know, I think when a manager is continually giving you the key to win any given game, and that it changes slightly from week to week depending on the opposition. You're coming away after every game thinking he was right again. All of a sudden, it builds up this groundswell of confidence, faith in the manager, confidence in yourself that everything's going to go okay, everything's going to be fine because everything's taken care of in terms of the detail. So as long as Adams has more of that, you know, I don't think he can go back to the what happened against Crawley. He can't afford that to happen 3, 4, 5 times in a season. I don't think you'll get the 2 clean sheets response every single time. So, you know, this can't come around too often. And so long as the players are executing what he's asking from game to game, that faith and confidence will build over time, because his information is clearly very good on a tactical level, you know, almost immaculate sometimes in terms of how he knows to win any particular game.
And maybe a bit of a broader question about Adams and about League Two. He's talked before about, you know, he feels there needs to be more bravado in the game. And, you know, his sides embody their managers, don't they, on the whole? And there's plenty of robustness about his sides at any given time. And Bradford, you know, I guess we're bullied a little bit last season, but certainly not this time around. And there is the old cliche that at League Two level, you do just need to grind out wins. You do just need to fight. You need some big players. You need some heart. You know, you need to battle well, especially in some of the conditions throughout the winter months. Is that why he is so suited to this level?
I think he's a difference maker. And I think he could manage at a higher level. And I think he absolutely certainly believes he could manage at a higher level. And he gets really frustrated about a lot of these first-time managers coming into the game and getting gigs at Championship and League One level. And yet his results record, you know, is extremely consistent. And, and I think he's a difference maker, basically. When you're going through periods of the season where games are just settled on fine margins because players are tired, the conditions aren't necessarily suited to anybody expressing themselves and playing the best football, games can often be won in a single moment and an area of the pitch where a team are vulnerable at a particular time. And I think Adams is very good at sort of cutting to the heart of any football match of this is the area of the pitch, or this is the type of build-up play that will unhinge this opposition. This is where the game will be won and lost. I think he's really good at that. And it doesn't matter if 80% of a football match is a mess and you don't really know what either team's trying to do. If in the other 20% of that game are 3 or 4 chances that you've created based on that precision of that information, then that makes all the difference. And I think that's how I see Adams. I think he just these key moments within a match that more than most managers, that key moment happening in that game was down to Derek Adams and something that he saw and outlined and articulated very, very well to his players so they understood it as well.
You said before you can see Bradford easily finishing top 7. Going into the playoffs, I think I'd probably want Derek Adams in charge. I don't know what other managers he'll be up against, but I think he'd be certainly in my top 2. Do you think promotion is achievable this season? Because Bradford fans would really like to see their side finally being upwardly mobile.
Yeah, I think you have to fancy Bradford for promotion, given that, I mean, we're talking 3 full seasons. He's had a playoff final with Plymouth and then promotion the following season. And then in his first full season at Morecambe, he's automatic promotion with the lowest budget team in the league. I think under those circumstances, you've got to fancy Bradford to get promotion this season. I don't think it'll be plain sailing. I don't think they'll just sail to the title necessarily. I think there might be bumps in the road. But I just think you look at the quality of personnel at Bradford, you look at Adams' track record as a manager, I think, yeah, you've got to fancy them. At the very least, they're going to be in the playoffs come the end of the season. It's just about when, Adams has to have enough credit in the bank that when these bumps in the road come along, he's right. Everybody accepts that he's right because he's shown us enough so far to believe we have to have faith in this guy and he's going to be right, even if we don't always agree with everything he says along the way. And so long as that, so long as they almost, they keep enough credit in the bank every step of the way, then they should be able to navigate those bumps in the road. But I don't think, based on where Bradford have come from over the past 2 or 3 seasons, I don't think we should expect it to be an all-conquering title charge necessarily. And it's kudos to get Derek Adams if that's eventually what emerges. I don't think it will. I think it'll be nip and tuck, but I'd expect Bradford to be there or thereabouts come the end.